So in this segment, we're going to be talking a bit more about the Australia trade deal, which the UK is looking like it's going to sign. Which the UK has offered Australia tariff-free trade deal, despite the fears of the farmers. So this is most likely going to happen. This is mainly due to the fact that the G7 summit is coming up, and the UK is desperate to have something that makes us look decent. The main problem is that other countries are going to sense that desperation and are going to take massive advantage of us. So the UK is to offer Australia a trade deal under which both countries would phase out import taxes over 15 years. So this is not, immediately going to happen, but the UK is slowly going to phase out tariffs on Australian beef and lamb, and also quotas as well. The cabinet was reportedly split on what terms to propose, amid concerns the UK beef and lamb farmers could be undercut by larger Australian producers. And this BBC article does talk about a couple more of the issues that the UK is going to have, sort of British farmers are going to have versus Australian farmers, which I found quite interesting. But point being is that Australia has a far more, I think, a far bigger farming industry. Sort of far more kind of sort of not just, these aren't small-time farmers, these are what people are describing them as, mega farms, or, huge farms, which, comes with its own benefits, especially since land is more expensive in the UK, and we have far more hill terrain as well. Australia has lower standards than us when it comes to food, but I'm not 100% sure if the UK are going to lower rules around imported beef or lower UK food standards. It's not clear, but what is clear is that the National Farmers Union, the NFU, and farmers are very concerned by this. We've got a clip of Boris Johnson talking absolute drivel as well to get to, but that'll be at the end of towards the end of the video. So Downing Street said the cabinet was now in agreement, so that means collective responsibility still exists, and that means George Eustice, the head of DEFRA, the Minister for DEFRA, is as responsible for this trade deal as Liz Truss is. So let's not forget that, and let's hold these people accountable for the decisions they're making. But the National Farmers Union said ending taxes on meat imports would destroy many UK farmers, and that's a massive problem. That environmentally, importing meat from across the world is going to have a massive environmental impact. Not to mention the fact that this beef won't be fresh; it'll be frozen. So that comes with sort of a ecological cost as well as that. So, but this is Liz Truss saying that she had reportedly been at odds with Environment Secretary George Eustice over the possible impact on farmers. This is going to be a massive problem for the UK, sort of environmentally speaking, but also, society, these farmers are going to lose out. The UK is already paying off farmers by the looks of things just to get them to retire early, because the UK, the government's claiming that it's for the new breed of farmers to come in, but realistically it's just to get rid of them so there won't be a headache anymore, because the new UK model is just going to import loads of cheap beef from around the world, which has a massive environmental cost. This is Boris Johnson saying that these trade deals present a fantastic opportunity for our farmers, for businesses of all kinds, for our manufacturers. We should see these new openings not as a threat but as opportunities. But there's a reason why the EU has tariffs against beef from third countries. There's a reason why, and that's to protect the domestic market. It's to protect domestic producers. And without these protections, these farmers are going to struggle. And Boris Johnson can bloviate all day talking about, are you saying that we can't compete with Australian farmers or American farmers? Yes, I'm saying that because it costs more to produce beef here. We don't have cheaper land like they do. We don't have as many mega farms as they do. And that means costs are more expensive in the UK. So inherently, we can't compete with these other countries. And if it's the case that Australia can produce beef and export it to the UK cheaper than British farmers can, that tells you how much cheaper it is in Australia. And if it comes to it that the UK starts trying to export beef to Australia, it's gonna be problematic, because by the looks of things, the majority of people in Australia are happy to buy the beef that they have, which is injected with antibiotics and hormones and other things. How are British farmers going to break into that market when it's already cheaper for them to buy Australian beef? Even organic Australian beef, it's cheaper for them to buy that because it doesn't come with the UK's higher land costs and the UK's higher transport costs. Like, this is ridiculous, the arguments these people are making. So under the deal set to be offered to Australia, taxes on imports would be phased out over 15 years. with quotas limits on sales between the two countries going over the same period, and this is going to be phased out over 15 years. It's very likely Boris Johnson won't be Prime Minister in 15 years. I can't see him being Prime Minister, so what that means is someone else will have to deal with it, whether that's Boris Johnson's replacement. It could be, Dishy Rishi, or it could be maybe a Labour government having to deal with it. I don't know what kind of powers Parliament will have to get rid of this deal in the future. I don't know, because this will be an international agreement. I don't know what kind of votes the UK would need to get rid of such, an egregious deal. In 2019-2020, trading goods between Australia and the UK was valued at £20.1 billion, and both sides are hoping to expand this amount considerably. But the thing is, in terms of GDP, this isn't a lot, especially since it comes with a cost. I think this article mentions it's at 0.01% of GDP, which is tiny. It's not worth much. Currently, metals, wine and machines form the biggest goods export from Australia to the UK, while Australia's main UK imports are cars, medicines and alcoholic drinks. So, these are massive problems that, that they're exporting cars, which, transporting cars is quite expensive and comes with, again, an environmental cost. This is ridiculous, to be honest. We're not going to gain much from this deal, especially compared to how much we lose. The NFU, National Farmers Union, has warned that pitting small-scale UK beef and lamb producers against vast Australian cattle and sheep stations could force many of them out of business, especially since these small-scale farmers might not have access to the freezer facilities that the Australian farmers have, because they seem like they're more used to selling frozen beef abroad, whilst UK farmers aren't. UK farmers typically used to sell their products to the EU, which was still fresh. Or chilled. Frozen meat is worth far less than fresh meat. So, the main buyers of this meat might not even just be the consumer. It might not be business, farm to customers or business to customers. It might be business to business. Other businesses buying this cheap beef and lamb to use in their products like lasagna and whatever else we eat in this country. Things like ready meals. And are people going to look at the origins of the beef on their ready meals? It's very unlikely. Approximately 0.15% of all Australian beef exports go to the UK, and last year 14% of sheep meat is imported to the UK from Australia. So it's not a lot, but that number is going to go up once the quotas and tariffs go. NFU President Minette Batters said removing tariffs on these products would have a massive impact on British farming, and this is the NFU who warned the farmers not to vote for Brexit because of the threat to subsidies, but also the fact that they're going to have to compete with countries that can produce meat cheaper than the domestic market can. So the NFU are doing their best to protect the farmers, but the farmers didn't do what was in their best interests. The farmers were very naive. She added, "We continue to maintain that a tariff-free deal with Australia will jeopardise our own farming industry and will cause the demise of many, many beef and sheep farms throughout the UK. This is true whether tariffs are dropped immediately or in 15 years' time." They're hoping just to get rid of a load of the farmers, so then this won't be a problem. Boris Johnson won't deal with the full consequences of this UK-Australia deal. It will be whoever's Prime Minister next and the person after them. They're the person that will have to deal with the most of these consequences. The Welsh and Scottish governments have opposed the nature of this trade deal. Northern Ireland's Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots said he was strongly opposed to ending tariffs and quotas, especially since it's going to make checks on meats going from GB to Northern Ireland far more aggressive, because the EU are going to be desperate to keep Australian meat out of the EU single market, which which Northern Ireland is a part of when it comes to goods. So that's one of the other reasons why Edwin Poots and the DUP are going to be against this kind of deal. And this could further inflame tensions with Northern Ireland, which is something we're going to be talking about anyways, the problems within Northern Ireland during the week. Conservative MP Neil Parish, chairman of the Commons Environment and in charge of Commons Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, said UK farmers could succeed in the beef market by exporting more higher end cuts such as sirloin to Australia. But the question I'm going to ask you, Neil Parish, is how big is that market for the UK farmers to do that? How big is that market? I doubt it's very big. It's very specific and it sounds very niche, and it's going to be very expensive for those Australian consumers to buy the UK cuts of sirloin. It's going to be very expensive. So these kind of arguments these people make are just ridiculous. He argued that current tariffs should stay in place for a few years to give them time to adapt to increased competition. But then what happens after that? How are they going to adapt to the increased competition? They're not, because they can't. unless the UK changes the rules around farming in the UK, which is very possible, these things will not change. The Prime Minister's spokesperson said any agreement would include protections for our agricultural industry and won't undercut UK farmers. But by signing this deal, you are undercutting UK farmers because they're going to face competition from countries that can produce meats cheaper. There's the competition right there, you massive idiot. Whoever the spokesperson is an idiot. We want a deal that is good for the British public, which in a sense this deal is, because so long as the beef isn't below UK standards, if we get cheaper meat into the country, it will help the UK consumer, especially given how high poverty rates are in the country. But this deal will not protect the agricultural industry. You cannot do both. You cannot give a deal for the British consumer that will give cheaper cuts to the consumer, but then will protect the agriculture industry. That doesn't work. You can only do one or the other. You can give British consumers cheaper access to cheaper meats, but that would damage the agricultural industry. Or you can have Australian meats in the country that are around the same price as the UK cuts, which isn't really benefiting the consumer that much, but that would protect the agricultural industry. You can have one or the other. You cannot have both. And that's the thing that these people refuse to say, and they will happily lie to people about this. Happily. We go on. This is an article from the other day talking about ministers discussing with British farmers with their concerns, but clearly they didn't listen, because regardless of what was said, the UK are still going to offer this deal to Australia. Not to mention the fact that Australia, despite the good terms of this deal, could ask for more concessions from the UK, because this is the UK offering a concession. Australia can say, no, we want more than that. They may overplay their hand doing that, but the UK are that desperate for deals that they might accept it. Liz Truss is in a sprint to agree the deal by early June. That's not very far. We are in the late stages of May. You're talking about 3 weeks to get the rest of this deal. There are huge fears Australian cow and sheep farms could undercut the UK rivals. Dishi Rishi said the deal will include the appropriate safeguards and protections for farming standards, which isn't the case. In an interview with Newsbeat, he said the government is keen to try and conclude a trade deal with Australia that's good for British business and for British shoppers, which again, you can do, but you're going to undercut British farmers if you try and give a deal that's great for British consumers. That's what's going to happen here. So Scottish Rural Affairs Secretary Mairead Goujian, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, has written to Miss Truss arguing that a trade deal that liberalises tariffs for Australian farmers, to put it bluntly, will put UK farmers out of business. And that's what we're going to see more and more of. More British farmers selling up land because they can't compete. This is the thing I was talking about earlier. How can our hill climbers compete with the Australian climate, he asked. How can our hill farmers compete with the space that is available for huge farms that they have in Australia? Because just, the land costs, for farming look like they're cheaper than in the UK. And because of the better, sort of quality land is flatter, you can have more cows there, and therefore making it cheaper for Australia to rear cows than it is in the UK. Mark Drakeford said UK animal welfare standards were higher than those in Australia, making two-way trade more difficult. This is a problem that we're facing here, that Australia has a competitive advantage inherently, even if you take away the antibiotics and the hormones and all the other stuff that makes their farming standards lower than ours. They still inherently have an advantage. Here we've got some analysis from Darshini David saying that Australia wants no tariffs on the goods it sends to the UK and doesn't want any quotas involved, which means that there can be an unlimited amount, potentially, an almost unlimited amount of Australian beef coming to the UK because there will be no quotas. That has alarmed farmers here. Our farmers tend to be much smaller, maybe a few dozen herd of cattle as opposed to thousands. And also we have higher charges for things like environmental standards. So they say we'd be disadvantaged, which is the case, that UK farmers inherently have a disadvantage to Australian farmers. Like, how is this hard for anyone in this country to understand? I don't get it. We know some cabinet ministers have some sympathy with that, but the Department for International Trade argues there will be safeguards in place. Any changes will be introduced many years. So that the only safeguards that they have are time limited. That's it. After that, you're done. You're done. Because ultimately, trade economists say if you look at the change in imports, we could see under a zero tariff situation, they are equal to 0.1% of our total imports. Very tiny. I think I've seen reports that the only way you're going to have a significant saving on Australian wine is if you drink about 3 bottles a day, which I think you'll save like a couple hundred maybe a year. But if you drink 3 bottles of wine a day for a year, you're going to be dead. You're going to be dead. So you won't even see, the savings. This is pure optics. 0.1% of GDP of total imports is tiny. this deal is just for optics. It's when you start talking about deals with big players in agriculture, the US and Brazil, they'll be watching this one closely, and they've seen how easily we've broken the pressure from the Australian farmers. And the US and Brazil are, I think, I can't speak for Brazil, but the US are far bigger players when it comes to international trade, and they're going to really look at the UK and see this is an easy market for us to exploit. That's what's going to happen here. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson said the UK was seeking deals tailored so that it would meet the best needs for the British people, and maybe it will be better for the consumer if these meats are up to standard, but they're going to decimate farming and you're going to decimate local economies. That's what's going to happen here. Fiona Simpson, president of the National Farmers Federation in Australia, said that there is a desire for some Aussie beef. That's a load of rubbish. That's genuinely one of the dumbest statements I've ever seen. And she also said Australian farmers were just not able to ship our products in any sort of quantity to the UK because it was too expensive and way too far. Well, the expensive bit's gone, but the geography's still there. So this is going to be an environmental problem for the UK, just like when the Patriots sank the tanker to frame Snake in MGS2. That's, we're talking massive environmental problems because of the transport. And also the fact that our local, agriculture is going to be destroyed by this, which is going to have further problems. That's going to be turned into housing and whatever else by developers. These are going to lead to further problems from the UK. But we cut to Boris Johnson, who's going to talk absolute rubbish here in the space of 36 seconds. So let's listen to this clip.
I don't think that he does justice to crofters, to farmers across the country and in Scotland as well, Mr. Speaker, because I think he grossly underestimates their ability to do great things with our free trade deals, to export Scottish beef around the world, Mr. Speaker. Why doesn't he believe in what the people of Scotland can do, Mr. Speaker? Why is he so frightened of free trade? I think there's a massive opportunity for Scotland and for the whole of the UK, and he should seize it and be proud of it.
Mate, this isn't a great opportunity for Britain. Why would Australia sign a deal that would be phenomenal for British farmers against Australian farmers? It doesn't make any sense. We are the ones desperate to sign this deal, therefore we are the one who are giving concessions. This is not hard to understand that this will decimate British farmers. You can argue it might be better for consumers, but overall, Australia might push for that hormone beef or lower quality standards to be pushed into the trade deal purely because that will benefit Australian farmers a lot. Not to mention this trade deal already does that. It already benefits Australia far more than it benefits us. Starmer's very quiet on this. Shocker there, but this argument that British farmers cannot compete with other countries is true. We can't, because we have higher costs in the UK and higher standards. Other countries don't. So the argument of Boris Johnson here talking about belief and all this patriotism doesn't matter when you're buying products as a consumer. It really doesn't. If you can save a couple of quid on your weekly shop, you're going to take it most likely, especially if you're poorer, if you're working class, maybe even lower middle class. So the arguments that Boris Johnson makes, you see, all he can offer is fake patriotism and all that stuff when he's going to decimate the British farming industry. How patriotic is it for you to decimate a proud British industry? They've already screwed the fishermen. Now they're getting the farmers. Who's next? That's the real question. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This deal is not good for British farming. It's not good for Britain in general. And this benefits mainly Australia. But, you can't stick that on the side of a bus, can you? Oh, wait, you probably could. But, this is just pure pain. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.